looking at section 8,
Oh,
shouldn't take a long time. Ms. St. James is gonna take us through section 8. And then we have a couple of witnesses, and since we have Rep. Hengo here, we may have you say a few words as well.
and I'm.
You're not going to speak, yeah,
I
we're gonna
was
wait to hear from
planning on-
BSAC. Okay, I'll be right back.
Great.
Well,
We have a forum,
You
so
wanna
we're
sit?
good. No, I'm fine here, thank you.
Yeah.
So
There he
this
is.
is section 8.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's part of 16 DSA.
James, Office of Legislative Counsel, so what you all have, this is H 874 as introduced. It was the House Education Committee bill, miscellaneous bill. The bill has since passed the House and is on its way to you. There were several amendments on the floor. So what the bill as introduced is actually very different than what you will get as passed by the House. But the section you all are interested in looking at today has not changed since the bill as introduced. And since we don't have a version of this bill that incorporates all of those amendments, we're just gonna work with the as introduced version. So I just wanna be clear that what we are looking at today, the bill as a whole will be very different when it comes to you, but the section 8 will not change. So my understanding is that you want to look at section 8, which I will just start by saying is part of a larger piece of the bill. But section 8 requires VSAC, adding section to the VSAC chapter. It requires VSAC.
No, that's.
To include information regarding all military-related options available for post-secondary planning and financial aid opportunities and any planning resources it produces. The section above, section 8, which I don't know that you're interested in, but I will just say, also requires AOE to issue guidance related to career planning that requires career opportunities and post-secondary planning opportunities to include all military and all military-related options in those resources provided to students. So that dovetails with VSAC requirement that they include all military-related options in their planning and financial aid resources.
Was this a floor amendment?
No. We're on page 14, line 5.
The original.
Oh, it's still in section. Okay.
We were tasked with just looking at section 8.
So section 8 shall be, that is just it. Include all military-related options for post-secondary planning and financial aid opportunities and all planning resources VSAC produces.
Can you give us like can you give us an example of what that it would look like?
I think that different branches of the military offer educational benefits. So what are those? The military academies, are colleges, military related. So that would include not just the branches of armed service, but also the Guard. They also offer tuition benefit, a lot of tuition benefits. So what are those?
All right, so I guess I'm just struggling because it's out of context. We haven't done the rest of the bill, but I'm having a hard time separating providing financial aid information with kind of like almost like a recruitment tool. Are you, for example, would you be saying like, well, if you go into the Army, you can learn how to fly a helicopter, which will cost you $100,000 outside of the armed forces. I mean, it's
I think what this is, I mean, that may happen. I think what this is meant to do is if you sign up with the Guard, you get this amount of money towards tuition at a college, or they pay for your master's, et cetera. So as the educational benefits.
okay. Oh, yes, sir, sorry.
So I think Representative Hango, we just had a bill that passed that kind of sort of sounds like what section 8 is talking about,
Okay,
that provided military personnel and their families with educational opportunities in Vermont. Is that correct?
Madam Vice Chair, may I?
you
speak?
may, if you could just identify yourself.
Yes,
there. Thank you.
absolutely. Representative Lisa Hango for the record. The bill that we had that passed last year greatly expanded the number of educational opportunities someone joining the Vermont National Guard has. This language is from a bill that I introduced in the House, H 739, and the House Education Committee saw fit to include it in the miscellaneous education bill instead of a standalone bill. And I think Ms. St. James went through pretty well the intent behind including this language. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Did you have a question?
Not a question, but a comment. It's an observation. That there's, from my feedback from superintendents and principals and such, is that there's essentially a heavy move to push awareness of those programs out of the schools. And this is a program, this is an effort, I believe, speaking on behalf of Representative Hanko's efforts, but this is to kind of counterbalance, and that when VSAC produces its financial opportunities, that they are including the military opportunities as well. And it's no more complicated than that, but it's countering an effort to push them out.
But opportunities strictly around financial aid.
Yeah, education, financially,
Okay,
post
gotcha.
secondary.
Okay, great, thanks. Wonderful,
It really does make the context is helpful
right,
when I come back and walk through the rest of the
right,
bill.
yes, that'll be helpful. Yeah. Senator Wood.
It could also have something to do with like civilian acquired skills or military skills that relate to civilian acquired skills. Because there is an interface that I've used before.
Okay. All right, was there do you know if there was a particular reason why the chair wanted to just do that
I do
section?
not, fortunately, I'm so sorry.
That's
He
okay.
alluded to the fact that the great deal of changes have occurred in the bill since
Except for that, Lisa. Okay,
low hanging fruit.
wonderful, so
You could dismiss them.
is Lieutenant Colonel Scott Lowe here?
He is in the waiting room. I'm admitting him now.
Okay, great, let's have him in.
You want me to stay here or?
Thank you, Lisa. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. I'll be home.
See you tomorrow.
They say,
Yeah, be safe.
Yeah, be safe out there.
I take the bus.
You can zoom here. Oh.
good for
Sorry,
you.
we're chatting here. Sorry, guys. Hello, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Lowe. Nice to see you.
Hello, and it's great to be seen. All right.
We see you and we hear you, and we look forward to your testimony.
Yes, and give me a second here. The everything was kind of thrown together pretty quickly. I opened the email from Morgan saying, "Hey, you want to do this tomorrow?" I was like, "Oh my God!" So, all right. Well, thank you for seeing me. This is fantastic. This is the first. I'm the first government relations advisor that Vermont has ever had, and so this is kind of the first time as a full-time person or a regular person going to Montpelier. And man, what a ride! You guys can really move quick in house when you need to. Before we go on here, am I able to do a share screen? Could I do a yes? Okay.
If Morgan says it's possible, then it is possible. And also, Lieutenant Colonel Lowe, could you give us a sense of what your time needs are?
Yeah. Well, the presentation should take under a half an hour, easily under. And it's more. It's under half an hour. I mean, I know the weather is getting awful bad out there. I know you're-
Yeah, if you could do it in 15, maybe maximum 20 minutes, that would be really
No,
appreciated. Yeah.
absolutely, sure. Well, actually, okay, let me be real direct then. Let me qualify this that I am neither authorized or qualified to advocate for H74. I'm here to kind of let you know who we are as an organization. And honestly, the passing of that bill would benefit Civil Air Patrol enormously. So, but I want to really state that where it's not, I'm not here to advocate for that. I'm here to let you know that we would benefit it tremendously. Now I am quickly editing the my presentation here. Let me see if I can do this.
And do you know where in the bill where we are, or Representative Panko, do you happen to know?
I do not, because I was not aware that, Mr. Lowe was going to be speaking
Okay,
until very recently.
okay.
So, I could ask, are you speaking on the secondary school, piece of the bill?
The well, this is actually simplifying. It's going to simplify it even more. So, as an organization, we are offering career pathway opportunities, and in terms of just what our program does with the cadet program in aerospace education, in fact, the phrase I use is that we are preparing the workforce of the future through our program. And so the aspects of it, like the personal, what do they call it now, is different when my kid was going to school.
Personalized learning plans?
Yes.
Yeah, the learning plans, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, and I'm not necessarily saying it's going to fit into the bill in that sense. It's more, actually, just to get right direct to the bottom line here, is that Civil Air Patrol has a very difficult time getting into schools. Not all schools, but certain schools. We're just kind of banned from even being on the grounds. Like there's a couple of districts where they're just suspicious of us, and one that won't let us into the grounds at all. We can't even set foot into the school district buildings or the schools. So
Lieutenant Colonel Lowe, could you please give us a real high level overview of the Civil Air Patrol? My dad was in the Air Force, my husband was in the Air Guard, but I don't really know what the Civil Air Patrol is. I'm sorry.
oh, that's quite right. Well, I'm looking at my slideshow here, and I'm actually editing as I'm speaking to you. So I'll just get right to the. I won't do the slideshow. I'll just give you the highlights, which is that we, back in the late 30s, there's a couple groups that realized that no one was patrolling the coastlines, as the Japanese and the Hitler and Germany and Japan were getting very aggressive. No one was patrolling those two coastlines, so they formed a kind of a volunteer group, which they called Civil Air Patrol and Civil Air Defense. And World War II broke out. The Major General Curry was managing all the defense at that time, assigned Civil Air Patrol to basically watch the coastline. So we became officially Civil Air Patrol, and they merged those two groups, became an organization. Our initial job was just to do that, coastline watching. As the best and brightest were kind of shipped overseas, what ended up happening is Civil Air Patrol became what we think of now as the National Guard. We took over disaster relief, search and rescue. We developed a youth program, a cadet program, and kind of took over all the people who did not qualify to go overseas because of their age or their health. Basically, a lot of them join Civil Air Patrol. In fact, we had like 43,000 sign up for the first 6 months of the war, and did very similar to what the Coast Guard does now. And we grew and grew. You know, when the war was over, we still continued functioning the same way, and we ended up with 3 missions: emergency services, aerospace education, and cadet program, which is a youth leadership program. So those still exist today. Let's see. I have a couple links to documents that kind of to our reports that can.
That's at the middle and high school level, correct? You're,
Yeah, for our cadet program, it's the ages 12 to 18. And the youth leadership, it's a youth leadership program. It is, we are the all volunteer auxiliary of the Air Force. And so there's 65,000 of us right now today. And the half of those are cadets. All right, let me.
And the Civil Air Patrol is an arm of the U.S. Air Force?
So that's, yeah, I'm getting that slide. So what ended up happening is there are 4 segments to the Air Force: the regular Air Force, the Air Guard, the reserves, and Civil Air Patrol is what's referred to as the we are the benevolent wing of the Air Force. So we only work domestically. We do not work with the armed services or the police. We are entirely humanitarian work. We did, well, for example, the great example is when COVID came, we delivered many tons of personal protection equipment and supplies in Vermont alone. When the flood came, we were up there right away. As it was happening, our planes were up there assessing the flood. So it's entirely domestic. We do not, like I said, we do not interact with, we are not an armed services division.
Yes,
yes,
Senator
Colonel
Case.
Lowe, if you could, maybe it would be helpful if you just took a moment to outline the hardware and the mission, current hardware and current mission, for my colleagues to understand where the Civil Air Patrol fits into the state of Vermont.
Oh, Vermont specifically, we have 2 aircraft actually right now. 2.5. Sometimes we get a 3rd one from as needed from New York, and I think we're up to 7 vehicles. Let's see. So we've got, actually, here's a spec sheet. 116 adult members, 77 cadets. Let's see, 9 locations.
That makes sense.
9 vehicles, 2 airplanes. That's Vermont.
So in relation to what you were just alluding to about the July post-flood aerial surveillance, what equipment were you using? That I think maybe helps my colleagues understand
Sure.
how you support the state.
For the flood, well, we've got it was largely our aircraft are configured for aerial photography, so airborne photography. So we were taking in that particular mission, we were just doing photos. We have a hatch in the window where you're just taking pictures right out the window at 1,000 feet up, and all the way up and down the flooded areas, trying to get that to the governor as soon as possible. And so I guess we would land and then email actually specifically it went to FEMA first. So everything we were doing it was a FEMA mission in that case. So all of our data went to FEMA, and then FEMA processed it and distributed it accordingly.
so you're not funded by the Department of Defense.
We are there's 2 funding here. One is the Air Force budget pays for our aircraft, vehicles, communications. Everything else is up to us. So uniforms, rent, electricity, everything that has to do with our operation in Vermont, we pay for that ourselves.
Thank you.
So if you have to continue since you know.
So do you have an ask of us today?
I didn't hear, say again?
Do you have an ask of us?
Well, it's the, normally I would be presenting to you guys about our STEM outreach program, and the ask would be about that. So it got kind of, things got a little, hey, do you want to talk about H 847? So that was 24 hours ago. So I don't have an ask for you for that specifically. There will be, my hope is that we get to know each other a bit better here, because the ask will actually come next year when we are expanding on our STEM outreach program.
Okay.
So for right now, I want you to be aware that as I read 847, I'm sorry, 874, it would open doors for us to be able to let schools know about Civil Air Patrol the cadet program specifically, and give us opportunities for that. So I'm not necessarily asking, I don't really have an ask for you as such. It's more like to let you know that this is something that would benefit us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Does it make sense to have Rep. Tango come up also? It's up to you, Senator Gulick.
Yes.
Yeah, and you just sort of tell us what, I mean, if the two of you are sort of in line, You're
She did
thinking?
speak to us
she did already.
while you were
Oh,
out very
great, okay.
briefly,
Oh,
but
great.
But if you would allow me, I probably could add a little bit of
Wonderful.
clarity. Appreciate that. I just need to tell someone I am
okay, and we'll
running
pass the baton
late.
back to Chair.
And if that's okay with you, Mr. Lowe, as well.
Yeah, because I'm just confused as to what part of the bill this is, but
I think I can shed some light.
Okay, we were told it's section 8.
Yeah.
And there was some requests to testify on section 8. So we thought we'd get started on section 8. So yeah, anything you can tell us, Rep. Tango, about what you would like us to do, that would be great.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Representative Lisa Hango, co-chair of the National Guard and Military Affairs Caucus. So in relation to this bill, H 874, if you, and I just want to make sure I've got the right section. If you actually look back at section 7, page 13, line 17. And I have to get to it again myself. Page 13, line 17, talking about school counselors and schools in general, public schools in general, that resources provided pursuant to this subdivision shall include information regarding the admissions process and requirements necessary to proceed with any and all military-related opportunities. I'm not sure, is it appropriate to call you Mr. Lowe rather than Lieutenant Colonel, since
So-
it's not a formal military title?
Mr. is completely fine. My grade is really more to do with the cadet program. So if I'm with cadets, call me Colonel. If in this context, Mr. or just Scott even is fine.
Thank you very much, and that's an important clarification, because not being affiliated with the military, the Civil Air Patrol is really, as it sounds, it's a civilian position. So I'll call him Mr. Lowe. So what he spoke to a little bit earlier about not being allowed into schools to speak to students is really important. And I have nothing prepared for today. It is actually totally random that I had time to come into this room while you're hearing this testimony. So here I go. This bill, this section of the bill, which was in H 739 in the House, came from a meeting of interested persons last fall who met with the National Guard to talk about a bigger picture. How do we let students and their families know that options other than going to college to get career guidance, how do we know, how do we let them know that this is available, that there are other options besides colleges? So we heard from a number of folks who were invited legislators to a gathering, not all of whom were at the, were members of the military complex. And we heard from them because they're parents of teenagers getting ready to go to college or do something else in their lives. And many of them had no idea that there were programs such as the Civil Air Patrol available to high school students. Many of them didn't know that if you join the National Guard, it's part-time, not full-time. There were so many misconceptions. So we had a great gathering and discussion of folks, both inside and outside of the legislature who came together. And this bill came from that. We need to make high school students and their parents aware of what the options are when students are planning for their future. We know that college is very expensive. We know that some students have a propensity to serve. Maybe their families have been in service of any kind, public service, military service. But these are not options that are typically presented to students. So we decided that it would be wonderful if all high schools could be inclusive. And when they are talking about college options, trade school options, career readiness, that they also talked about the military. And not to say that they need to push any one thing or another, but to have the materials available for students and for their parents. And that in itself led to talk about the corporation, VSAC, and also in their publications, making sure that these particular options are listed, not necessarily Civil Air Patrol, but perhaps the military academies and how they're free to students if you go through the application process and you're accepted. Or if you join the National Guard, we have fantastic, I think the best in the country, thanks to all of you, tuition benefits by working at the Guard and attending school. So I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there, and if we could put everything on the table, and then students and parents can choose for themselves what's best for their lifestyle. But right now, there are a lot of misconceptions and very much so not a great understanding of what the military options are. So that in a nutshell, without any preparation today.
That's pretty good, Representative. I'm wondering, Representative, would you be willing to get some language to us?
Yeah, I actually, in 874, the miscellaneous ed
We have
bill,
before us,
you
yeah.
have it before you. So page 13, line 17 addresses the secondary school counselors and what we hope to have made available to high school students as they're doing their PLP, personalized learning plan.
So I
And
apologize, so this is already here.
It is
This
already
is just coming in, this is supportive language, okay,
And
right.
also section 8,
Yeah.
which deals with the corporation.
I see, okay.
Asks that the corporation will include military options when all other scholarship options are presented to students.
So I think it's BSAC that is going to come in to talk about section 8. And they might have some, I think that's where some concerns. Okay, Senator Hashim, please.
Thank you. I appreciate this. Before I ask my question, I will say, I also make sure to let my daughter know there are military options, and she's very curious about becoming a pilot. So maybe similar. But
Yes.
one question I have regarding this in general is was there any conversation about preemption? Because I'm curious about how in-depth VSAC would go with what information they provide and what role they play as almost like a middleman. And I know that there's express and implied preemption when it comes to well, the federal government, and you know, by proxy, the military. So was that a topic that ever came up, or are there any concerns there or anything like that?
Not a topic that came up, but thank you for bringing it up. And the way I envision this and all of the legislators that I've spoken to in the military caucus, is that BSAC would just be a clearinghouse of information, which is basically what they are now. And, the following options are listed, and it would be up to the student to investigate those options. For instance, if you wanted to apply to a military academy, you need to get a congressional a nomination, sorry. Or you could join the National Guard, and they have a certain number of slots who are available to Guards members who could apply to an actual military academy. But beyond that, I don't foresee anyone having to go in depth in terms of describing what is available, how to get there, what a student might need to do to get there. You know, perhaps a BSAC counselor would discuss that if the student had a true interest in pursuing it. This isn't for everybody, but certainly someone like your daughter might want to speak to someone. So I think it would behoove a BSAC counselor to understand at least how to go about the process so that they could adequately guide a student along the right path.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Tom Little might be a good person to talk to about this.
Yeah, he could not be here today. And I'll look to Ms. Buckley to have him in this week, either Mr. Little or, if you don't mind working with Scott. Does that work? Can you set them up? You'll work with Morgan to set them up for this week.
If they're available.
That'd be great. Yeah, I know they can't do it today.
Would you mind me bringing up an area of concern?
After Senator Williams asks this
Sure.
question.
Well, I just want to let the committee know that I, as a member of the Vermont National Guard.
Yeah.
The Adjutant General has, West Point, I was on the West Point field team that did, pre-testing, physical aptitude exams and, interface with the cadre at West Point. So one of the problems that I had was we couldn't get into the schools. The guidance counselors, I don't mean to single anybody out, but they didn't want their students talking to military. You know, because they had them on a career track or some special track. And I was also recruiting attention there for my unit.
For your what?
For the unit in the
Yeah.
Guard.
Yeah,
Back in the 80s, they were, you know, low strength, similar to what they are right now. And the only way we were able to overcome that was we had local guardsmen in the communities that knew the people, knew the teachers, and they were able to get in there and talk to the kids. So this is a good step, I think, with this adult.
May I make a comment?
yes, please, Colonel, go ahead.
One of the things about Civil Air Patrol is that by far the majority of students who end up going into the military join Civil Air Patrol because they wanted to go to the military. Very few of them actually join Civil Air Patrol and decide they want to keep with the military. But the other thing that's important is that we have endless stories of young adults, young teens who are really in a bad way. And they get into Civil Air Patrol and it totally straightens them out in Vermont, everywhere. There's endless stories like that. And I like to say it's kind of try it before you buy it. If you're thinking about military as a young adult, be with Civil Air Patrol. If you don't like it, you leave. It's a volunteer organization, but it really gives and that's probably one of our strongest things because most of them stay. And, you know, the ones that leave is because they can't grow their hair long, you know, things of that nature. But it's, go visit a squadron during a cadet meeting. It's phenomenal. And they, you know, I guess I made my point, which is that if it's not right for them, they leave. If it's right for them, they stick with it and go off to be lawyers and first responders and whatever.
Great. Thank you, both, or I'm sorry, Representative Hanwood, do you have a final comment before we have to adjourn?
I did have
Okay.
one concern, about when VSAC comes in, there was a slight bit of, miscommunication in that, VSAC, I believe, thought that the guard was asking to be invited to be personally at their paying for college nights, and that was not the case. So this bill does not address that, but if that comes up in conversation, that's not the case. And I have one final thing. I did prepare testimony for House Ed and delivered it to House Ed. I'd be happy to send it to you all if you,
Great.
I'll send it to your committee
That'd be great.
assistant.
Morgan Feldman.
And then you can read that, and hopefully that will help. I was not really prepared to testify today because I have a whole spiel about why this is really, really important, but I appreciate you letting me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and we'll have you back in, and I would suggest, like I said, Ms. Buckley will work with Mr. Feldman to get things set up,
Right.
and then you can come down and weigh in if you have concerns. or
Thank you,
questions.
and
Yeah.
I appreciate, because I know I tried to catch you and that was last minute
No
and,
problem at all. It worked out fine.
perfect.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colonel, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you.
So two final things, I just, as an FYI, I did put in everybody's folder, Morgan did this, college costs up to $95,000 at some schools, it's in your folder. It is really, and we're gonna hear from the chancellor of our state university next week. I think it's next week or the week after, but, yeah, $95,000 some institutions in the Boston area are up to, I'm not sure why you already didn't give one. There you go, it's all yours, especially with somebody who is gonna be looking at college costs sooner rather than
Yeah,
later.
good luck, man.
Yeah.
thanks.
And then
Sorry,
second,
what if you
On
said
this salary.
for it, however.
and then secondly, we have been working with Kendall to try to find a time for our new Secretary of Education hearing. And does anybody, so the week of the, no, we're gonna be left. The week of the 22nd is what we are left. The week of the 22nd is what is working for the administration. And for Zoe Saunders. I'm trying to think, the 22nd is a Monday, and I think a lot of people in this building might want to follow the hearing, so I'm not a big fan of doing it on a Monday. I'm thinking we do it on Tuesday, the 23rd, so that people can sort of be a part of it or watch but it's up to all of you if you prefer to have it on a Monday.
Is it gonna be in this room? Or
It likely will be in this room at this point.
Okay.
At this point, it will be in this room.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
There.
23rd. I was thinking doing it on the 22nd, but then I thought, well. People are around the building on the 23rd, they're not around the building on the 22nd. And if we were to shift it to a bigger venue, a larger space, people could at least come in and watch. And participate.
So we won't have a committee meeting that day, we just have the.
I imagine we will completely be engaged in probably, I'm guessing, an hour and a half conversation. Probably, I'm guessing I'm gonna think about it as a 2-hour meeting. I think we will likely ask, I think we may have a request for some people to come in to support the candidate. And so I suspect we'll also give anybody who wants to come in and perhaps not support the candidate would also be welcome.
Is that typical
It's
procedure?
only typical with judges. You've done it, I was just talking with Senator Ruth a lot of judges, so I would think that we'll probably, sounds like we'll do that. I suspect, that's how it'll be run. Probably have 4 witnesses pro, 4 witnesses maybe not pro, that kind of thing.
I mean, do we do that for other appointees in Vermont government?
So I'm talking with, I think it's possible, I think it can happen. Even if it has never happened, it can happen if we end up moving in that direction.
Okay, and I was told it was gonna be on the 15th, so that changed.
That did change. I had hoped that it would be on the 15th. The governor's office is asking for the following week. Ms. Saunders will be arriving and, meeting with her team, and I guess doing a little traveling to the States. So we're gonna do it. And I would also say, I would just add, since we will all be, this committee will be, under a bit of a spotlight. I know Senator Hashim has a meeting with Ms. Saunders coming up.
Already have.
We already had one. I had one on Monday. I would highly recommend, everyone have one, but you don't have to.
Right.
I think it's just, we are going to be responding to our colleagues, and people are gonna be asking. Seems to me like to do, I'll just leave it there. I think it's helpful.
I've
Yeah.
already been in communication with her. We haven't set a date.
Okay.
But I will.
If you're recommending it, but yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend it. Anything else? I guess the only final thing I have is, I think we will be hearing from the Attorney General on PCBs, maybe at the end of the week as well. So,
Are we gonna get from the Secretary of State on S-203? I'm more of, I feel like the
he
time.
hasn't written to us,
running
has
out.
she?
Do we need to hear from the Secretary of State?
I think we do need to hear from, well, Ms. Hibner offered her services. Okay, so, yeah.
Okay.
Senator Weeks.
No, what's the issue with it?
I'm hoping we can attach it to the miscellaneous ed bill. So, but if there's any more testimony we need, then we should be doing it.
Anything from your end, Senator Lynch? Great work. Great. Senator,